So based on where we left off, I think you might think this might be a pretty interesting 3 days. I hope it is. The idea is like, so where are we going here? Like, what is the reason for this? Why do we need to know this? Why is this so important? And I think those are really good questions to ask yourself, because part of the reason that you would actually sit and do this, so the average person, this is something that's actually kind of funny if you think about it, because what I just gave you in that first 50 minutes or so really should be what an average person that's going to live an average life should seriously be thinking about, as far as how they want to conduct themselves as a human being and show up in the world so that they can be a productive member of society, be productive in their family, be responsible, and be able to live a quality of life. And then, of course, you have individuals like yourselves that want to do more than just be mediocre. A lot of you in here feel that you have not only much higher potential, but you're really driven to a higher purpose. Like there's something, some of you know exactly what it is. Some of you are on the path of finding out what that is, and you're going through some self-discovery, and you're looking for answers, and you're looking for systematic procedures to help you get there, and on and on. So what's the purpose? So the purpose is that the more that you understand this, the more you arm yourself with that power, okay? Because the more you become aware of that power, the more you have the ability to do something with it. One of the points that I was attempting to drive home is that we have to be so very careful not to be afraid of it and run away from it, but we need to hold it with a reverence and an understanding that, it has great potential on both sides. And it's an interesting thing about human beings, very often we can do very, very destructive things just to ourselves alone out of ignorance. The universe operates by a very strict set of laws, and it doesn't deviate because you're nice, and it doesn't deviate because you're ignorant. I mean, whether you're a serial killer or you're the nicest little old lady in town, if you walk off a building, gravity doesn't care. You're going down, right? So we operate in a universe that's based on cause and effect. And the more we go into self-denial about the cause of what the effect is that we're experiencing in our life, the more problems that we have. And it goes all the way to like even the most simplest things, which actually aren't so simple when you think about it, but like what makes you happy, right? How do you be happy in life? There's so many people that would be a big deal for them if they could just figure out, how can I be happy? Doesn't matter what they have. You don't need a whole lot to be happy. But what you do need to do is you need to learn how to think. And I think that a lot of us are under the illusion, because we went to school and that we're somewhat educated, that we have learned how to think. And it's very incorrect. It's very incorrect. And it presupposes that we're actually thinking accurately, and that's even more incorrect. Because then we run into the problem of, why am I having this problem, and I'm smart, but I can't seem to solve the problem, and I can't seem to do the things that are necessary for me to do. And even when I try to do the things that are necessary for me to do, I'm not affecting any change with anybody else. So it becomes perplexing. And then life starts to become superstitious and mysterious. Even Napoleon Hill talked about it in Think and Grow Rich. He said, one of the hardest things for people to do is let go of their damn superstitions in life. And superstitions are basically anything that we create in our mind when we don't understand the cause and effect of what we're experiencing. That's how superstitions were created. That's one of the reasons why people still use the word luck. I mean, I know a lot of very, very successful entrepreneurs that still believe that there's a piece of luck that is involved in them being successful because there's certain things that they just can't explain that happened that are part of that puzzle that allowed them to be successful. And fair enough, we need to learn a way to communicate that, but if we're going to stay in a responsible state of truth, the idea should be, I do need to put in some thought to something that I'm experiencing, even if it's good. I mean, I would say even especially if it's good, that I don't understand. Because I was told something that was pretty earth-shattering one time. I had this very interesting experience where my income tripled in a month. And it shouldn't have, based on the education that I had at that point and the experience in life that I had at that point and the people that I had been around in my life at that point. My income should not have tripled in a month, and it did. And I knew that I changed something, but in my mind, that change, at least from what I had known at that standpoint in my life, should not have equaled any effect in my income whatsoever, because all I was doing was changing three pretty basic things in my attitude and the way that I was showing up, kind of viewing the world at that time. And all of a sudden, bam, this huge change happens, and I'm like, what the hell? So I began studying because I wanted to find the answer. I thought, well, if I could find the answer to that, maybe I could straighten the rest of my life out, and things would go pretty well. And it took a while before I met somebody who actually could explain it to me. And he said, it was my mentor, and he said, you're very much like me when I was your age. He said, but you have to understand the danger point about what you did. And I said, what's that? He says, you don't know what you did. And I'm like, well, why is that dangerous? He said, because when things change, you won't know what to change. And I was like, oh. And then he went into this whole diatribe about how the world's constantly changing. I'm like, all right, you're fucking horrifying me. Just stop right there. Things were great in my life 5 minutes ago. Now I'm totally disturbed and I need therapy for a year. So stop. But he was right. He was absolutely right. We look for fixes because we don't want to deal with the discomfort of what we're experiencing. And if the fix works, that's good enough for us. But that's when we really need to think. Because you have to understand that you're the operating mechanism behind whatever it is that you're doing to fix the problem. So however you show up, whatever your level of understanding is around what it is that you're doing, is going to determine whether you can then overcome the next obstacle, whether you can think your way through the next challenge, where you can figure out the next problem. Because not only is life changing, it's changing faster than it ever has. I mean, it's one of the problems that we're currently experiencing in life because people are not currently emotionally keeping up with the technological change that we have. So what that does is it causes a tremendous amount of uncertainty. I meet people every day that had solid businesses and then they're out of business. And they're like, what the hell? I mean, like, whoever thought cabs might go out of business? The guy that created Uber. But the cab people didn't know that that was going to happen. They never thought it would. There's a lot of businesses that are going out of business because technology and people are thinking and our ability to do things is happening at such a rapid rate. And we don't even know it. It used to be at one time we would kind of see change coming, and we had time to prepare for change a little bit. We had time to emotionally get ready for change. Today, it's like we went to bed and woke up and Trump was president. I mean, there you go. How did that happen? So we have to understand ourselves. Because that's the one thing that we do have some control over in order to adapt and meet the change so that we can respond well. So let's take a look at that. So I'm actually fascinated because now I could take this quote away from Val. Leland Val Vanderwall was my mentor's mentor, and I always thought to myself, I don't know if Val came up with that quote. He didn't. I found out this week. Nietzsche came up with the quote. But it's also very true. So I want you to think about this for a second. The degree to which a person can grow is directly proportional to the amount of truth that he can accept about himself without running away. Well, that's kind of what we just talked about. It's the parts of us that we don't want to look at. Now, let's look at that from a different perspective, because there's also another side to this, right? And here's what that is. So you might say to yourself, okay, I get it. It might not have been a lot of fun to listen to, but there's some sense there. I can understand that. And then you go back to thinking about what you like to think about. So what's the danger there? The danger is that you fall into magical thinking. That's one of the things for 20 years that I've been watching people do left and right, because they get their hands on some of the real great truisms about positivity and spirituality and entrepreneurship and abundance, and they just want to hold on to those good things because they don't know how to deal with the dark side of their life. So they live in this magical world in their head, but again, when something goes wrong, they don't know how to change it. Because the problem is that they're afraid of the other side. They haven't come to terms with their past. They haven't come to terms with things that have happened to them or things that they've seen. There's a study that's been done, and it's continuing to go on. And it's a really fascinating study about people with PTSD. And how many of you, just by a show of hands, let's just see where the room is on this. How many of you are under the understanding that PTSD, like let's take our brave people that have been to war, and use them as an example of this. Although it can happen in an abusive relationship, it can happen from a traumatic childhood, it can happen from a car accident, lots of different things that cause PTSD. But how many people are under the impression that most of the PTSD is caused by what these people witnessed when they were in war? Raise your hand. How many of you are under the impression that it's because of what they saw themselves do? Yeah. That's what the research is showing. Because there's no frame of reference for it in their mind. They have no idea how to come to terms with what they had to do or what they were part of doing. Now, here's the pathology in this. How are you going to show up when something relatively proportional to a tragedy happens in your life that you're not prepared to handle? Because that's when you have the potential of doing something that you'd never believe you would ever do before. That's when you'll scare yourself to your core. That's when a person has the ability to lose the foundation of everything that they believe to be true in their life, because they didn't see it coming, and it rattles everything that they thought that they knew. It's very dangerous. I'll give you a really easy example of this that probably everybody can relate to. Even if you have not experienced this in your life, you know somebody that has. Let's say that you're married and your spouse cheats on you. And you think I've been in this marriage for 10 or 20 years. I thought I had this amazing marriage. And then one day you find out your spouse cheated on you. Why is that so rattling for someone? Well, we think immediately, well, it's the betrayal, right? I loved this person, I sacrificed, I worked at the marriage, and I was betrayed. And we would be right. in saying that, right? There's a level of betrayal there that just cuts to the bone. But there's something else that takes place when that happens. It removes everything from the past and being true in your mind. Because you realize, oh shit, this person's been cheating on me for 10 years, and I didn't know it. So everything that I believed in the past that was true, it wasn't true. I was living in a fucking illusion for 10 years, believing that it was true. How about when you go into business with somebody and they embezzle on you? There's all kinds of things that happen to us in life that make us really question everything that we stood for and believed and did and worked toward. And then we wake up and go, what the hell? And because we have an innate need to really be grounded, like we need to know, as human beings, we need to know that we're safe. We have that need to know that. It's what allows us to be able to move through our life. And we don't like when somebody tells us that the world's not safe. But even though that's the truth, I mean, safety is actually an illusion. There is no safety. You're not safe. I'm not safe. Anything could happen to us at any moment in time. We're not safe. What gives us the ability to maintain any semblance of safety in our life is our ability to understand how to respond when something goes wrong. But if we're denying the things that are wrong in our life, we never learn how to respond when something does go wrong. No. When we deny what's wrong in our life, we never learn how to respond when something else goes wrong. Because that's how we learn. We learn by experience. That's how we build confidence. Where do you think your confidence comes from? Confidence is not something that all of a sudden you just get in your life. You get it through having an experience and making a mistake and doing it again and making a mistake and doing it again and making a mistake and doing it again and getting it right. And then doing it again and getting it right. And as we continue that repetition, we build the confidence that we've mastered that thing, or we're proficient at that thing. And that's exactly what we do with our whole life. So all of you who are in here are really confident at a lot of different things in your life. What do you do when the day comes when something challenges that and says everything that you believed in that you're holding confidence in is not true? You fucking fall apart. Because psychologically it rattles your perception of what's good and true and honest and moral and ethical in your own being. And that can happen at the drop of a hat. Like, I watched it happen in 2009 during the housing crisis. People believed they had their homes, and then they didn't. People believed that they had businesses that were based on industries, and then they didn't. So to go through the world with blinders on, not looking at what the possibilities are, does not keep you safe. It puts you in great danger of something significantly going wrong. Now, here's the positive side to this. The positive side to this is that if you understand it and you work with it, and you develop the emotional and the intellectual maturity to deal with those things as you move forward, you have the ability to take in more information that will allow your life to make quantum leaps forward. Because part of you is not holding back because of your own fear. But all we want to hear is, well, tell me how to make the quantum leap. What are all the steps to make the quantum leap? That's like giving the keys to a Ferrari to a 4-year-old. Like you're going to run into the wall. Even if you get out of the driveway, you're going to kill yourself. You have to understand what's going on with you. And not just going on with you, but why you do what you do. Because don't you think it would be a good benefit, like if something bad was happening in your life and you kind of saw yourself behaving in a way that was really a little terrifying, and you asked yourself, why am I doing this? But you had an answer? Because you might have more of a chance of getting yourself back on track than if you didn't know why you were doing it. Because very often, even when you don't know why you're doing it, and other people are going, why are you doing that? You don't listen. Because the only thing that you're concerned with in the moment is getting rid of the pain or the fear. So you continue to do something that is not any good for you or anybody else. Not to mention that, you stop in that moment, you stop your ability to move forward. And this happens in a micro way in business every single day. Every single day. How many of you in here own a business? Raise your hand. Do you not have challenges every single day that you need to think? You need to really think. Like, what is the decision that I'm going to make around this? And you know that decision doesn't just affect you. It affects the money, it affects the resources, it affects the people, it affects relationships. So you're constantly thinking, like, how do I do all of this? Not just maintain where I am, but how do I go after the vision? How do I make this bigger? How do I scale the damn thing? And not blow it up in the as I'm doing it. They're really serious questions that you have to ask yourself. So if you don't understand what the driving forces are behind you in order to stay safe, we have a tendency of doing two big errors in our life. One is that we won't embrace the vision so that we can step into our purpose and fulfill the reason that we're here to begin with. That's one. Number two is that we'll make incorrect decisions based on our fear that will inevitably cause the catastrophe of what we don't want to experience to become a reality in our life. That is what Jung called the shadow side of our personality. Because anything that we subconsciously suppress or repress is expressed in an unhealthy way. But you don't know it. And that's the danger part. That's the part that causes the problem. So if we can't look at the whole truth of ourselves here, then we try to stuff it away. We move into magical thinking. We're only looking at what's good. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that looking at what's good is a bad thing. There's a real practicality to that makes a huge difference in a person's life. But not until you understand all of it.